Right. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's session with our partners from Cintas. As some of you are still coming in online, we are just going to briefly have the visual where you can see the AIA slides. We'll let folks get acclimated with their setup so they can see the screen. And then at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Amelia Armstrong from Cintas for today's session. Amelia?
Thank you, Suzanne. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's presentation. I'm Amelia Armstrong. I'm a marketing manager with Cintas Corporation and your host today. It is with great pleasure I present Michael Kerr and Garland Coyer as our guest speakers. Michael is a major account manager and has been with Cintas for over 19 years. He has spent the last 7 years dedicated to the higher education space, working directly with physical plant administrators, environmental health and safety professionals, and many other leaders just like you. Michael primarily supports our colleges and universities within the state of Florida. Garland is a global account manager for our First Aid and Safety Business Division and has been with Cintas for over 17 years. He has spent the last 3.5 years solely focused on education and government organizations. He has exposure to leading universities and districts to bring you emerging practices and trends specifically in the eastern half of the United States and eastern Canada. His specialty is helping campuses implement department and campus-wide safety programs. We're excited for you to join us today and to learn how campuses are taking steps to ensure a safe and healthy campus experience. Welcome to the virtual stage, Garland Coyer.
Hey, thanks, Amelia. Truly appreciate that. And hey, I want to thank all of you for joining the call today. So we're going to cover 5 key topics that play an important role in across every college campus: eye wash stations and shower stations, fire protection, employee heat stress, NFPA 70E, and then we'll close it out with AED programs. We'll spend about 10 minutes on each of the topics. The chat will be active. Therefore, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. And then at the end of the presentation, we will address all questions. So we first want to start off by talking about eye wash stations and eye wash safety. So most of you on the line are probably familiar with the ANSI standard Z358.1-2014, which is truly geared toward emergency eye wash and shower equipment. Below, you'll see some very important points as it relates to the overall functionality and the requirement for the device themselves. I'll touch on some of these points as we go through the presentation. So why are we even talking about eye wash stations on a college campus? So to put this in perspective, we have some figures on here I want to share with you. 800,000, that actually represents the number of eye injuries that occur annually throughout the US, North America. 36,500, that represents the number of employees that will be required to take time off because of their eye injury. 60% represents the EH&S professionals who are not confident that their eye wash stations are regularly maintained. Ironically enough, some of you took the survey when you registered, and that number showed 56% of you weren't confident as well, which is truly aligned with the national average. That 70% actually represents those EH&S professionals who are not confident that the device itself will even work if there is an emergency. And that's pretty astounding when you think about it. $26,568, that represents the average cost of an eye injury, while 300 million represents the total amount lost in production time, medical expenses, and workers' comp. Overall, the average cost of a device is minuscule compared to the risk and the numbers that you see on the screen, especially when you think about what the average cost of an eye wash injury is compared to the actual cost of the actual device itself. So when it comes to college campuses, if you think about a small campus, you can still literally have 100 or so devices spread across your campus. These stations can be anywhere in your labs, your workshops, can be in your warehouses, the physical plant, in a variety of different places all throughout the campus. Whereas your larger campuses could have literally over 2,000 devices spread throughout the campus when you include the laboratories, especially for those colleges that do a lot of research. So you have to ask yourself, well, what is the protocol for inspecting these large amounts of devices throughout the campus? How do you ensure that you're getting your inspections and those flushes throughout the entire campus consistently according to the ANSI standard? How do you even keep track of the record keeping for that number of devices all throughout the campus? Is your program flexible enough to adjust when things start to change on campus? When you start to need extra space, or you're flexing a space to create more chemical storage space in a classroom setting or in a room or whatever the case may be, is your program flexible enough to actually flex with changes in the actual program or throughout the campus? So what I want to show here, what you can see on the screen, is a quick video that is basically showing students who activated an eye wash station on their campus. And as you can probably imagine, they then shared that snippet or that video on social media. Students saw it, faculty saw it, staff saw it, and of course, alumni. They released that video on a Thursday. I actually saw it on that Friday. And then Monday morning, I was literally on a plane scheduled to meet with that director of EH&S to talk about eyewash programs for their campus. And so this does not only impact you and your employees, but your students are also paying close attention as well. So what does it take in order to have a world-class program? By far, across your college campus, you have to start with the barcode system for all of your devices. That's the best way to ensure that every single device can be accounted for, and it'll also give you a degree of accountability, because if you're able to scan before you start the inspection, that can then give you a record of when the last time that device was actually inspected, along with the notes to tell you exactly what happened when the inspection took place. The second part to an effective program is having the proper tools in place for those employees to actually do any of the activations or the maintenance. Typically, when I meet with customers, one of the first questions that I like to ask them is, hey, when you last did your annual inspection on this specific device, what was the temperature of the water? And the reason why I ask that question is because if they're following the ANSI standard, these are some of the details that they should truly know. Unfortunately, I typically get one or two answers. Hey, I'm really not sure, or we don't actually do that. And what that tells me is that even though you want to follow the standards, the ANSI standards for the Z358, you didn't necessarily equip your employees with the tools in order to do that job effectively. How do they measure the flow of their eye wash stations? How do they measure the flow of the showers themselves? All of that requires some specific tools in order for them to really understand, will this device be ready in the event that there is an event? Also on college campuses, some of you may have your self-contained units as well. So another question that I like to ask is, hey, when was the last time this solution in your self-contained unit, when was the last time it was actually changed out? Because overall, that solution should be changed anywhere between 90 to 120 days. But if they don't necessarily have the tools to do that, then 9 times out of 10, it's probably not happening. So again, in order to build that effective program, first off, you really need to barcode all of those devices, so that way you can keep track, you'll have a record, and that gives you a degree of accountability as individuals start to do their inspections or maintenance. Followed by giving them the proper tools according to the ANSI standard in order for them to know that these devices are truly ready in the event that there is an event. So now I want to turn it over to Michael so he can talk a little bit about fire protection.
Wow, that video says a lot. Thank you for sharing, Garland. I'm going to focus on the fire protection program on your campus. And nothing is more important to a college than the health and safety of students, faculty, and staff. And maintaining your life safety program is a large part to the success of that statement. It can be challenging and time consuming for a college campus to properly maintain their fire protection program. College campuses are large, usually spread out over many acres, with some buildings are historic landmarks and others are brand new construction. And since the pandemic, many industries have been challenged to attract and retain staff. These labor challenges have significantly impacted higher education, as I'm sure many of you can think of at least one person on your campus who has left or retired from the university. And they were that go-to person. They had the skills, the experience, that institutional knowledge that was vitally important to the department. There are about 3,900 degree granting colleges and universities throughout the US, while an average of 3,400 structure fires occur every year on a college campus. That's a high mathematical probability that most colleges will experience a fire on their campus in 2024. February is a peak month for fires and dormitory type properties. And since most campuses are in the midst of budget season, it's the perfect time to evaluate the resources allocated to your fire protection program. I assume that you may not oversee all the fire safety programs on your campus, but as you can tell, there are many different systems to track. I've worked with several college campuses that only manage a portion of their program in-house, such as the monthly inspections for the fire extinguishers, while the rest of the work is outsourced to a third-party service provider. Depending on the number of extinguishers that you have on campus, just keeping up with the monthly inspection can be a part-time job for someone. So the reality is, regardless of what systems you oversee, it's very likely that you will need to work with an outside supplier. That vendor relationship is key to the program's success. So let's now take a look at a few points to consider when evaluating that vendor relationship. There could be a variety of inefficiencies and roadblocks created with so many fire systems and vendors to support the work needed. With multiple vendors, the first challenge might be to get the right person on the phone. You have to juggle the academic schedule with the availability of the vendor. No one wants the fire alarm going off for testing during midterms or finals week. You could have a lack of consistency when other departments decide differently on how they want to manage their life safety program. Facilities does one thing while housing does something else. Then you have athletics doing their own thing. Compliance to NFPA code could be quite inconsistent. And everything we do, communication is a big key to success. Let's focus our attention on the bullet here in the middle under lack of communication that states incomplete or unclear reporting. Fire inspection reports that are not legible or hard to read because they are handwritten or because they are carbon copies, well, that's a significant gap in a high-level fire protection program, and it's just plain frustrating. I'm not going to cover all the details here, but there are several great points for you to consider. You will have access to a copy of this presentation that you can refer back to when evaluating your vendor options. Let's move on to discuss ways to avoid or eliminate these issues. Taking your fire protection program to a higher level would focus on three key areas: the people, the process, and the promise. Selecting the right vendor partner to support starts with someone who has the right people. A local presence and 24/7 on-call support are the basic necessities for any college campus. I mean, doesn't it seem like the fire alarm always goes off at 2 or 3 in the morning? When evaluating the right partnership, dig in and ask questions about the hiring process and ongoing training. You will want to partner with someone who invests in their people. The vendor should also have robust processes in place to connect with you proactively and offer various scheduling options. We know that winter break, spring break, and summertime are some of the best opportunities to complete inspections as there are less students on campus. I touched on this earlier, but a big miss that I still see in the industry is poor documentation. We should be way past the days of carbon copies and handwritten reports. Ask for samples of all reporting to ensure it will help enhance your current program, not create potential roadblocks. Finally, the promise. That's where the vendor should shine with the right culture and service guarantee. Other benefits could be considered, could be consolidated bill pay or early payment discounts. Now, Garland's got our technology slide up for us. Thank you, Garland.
Yep.
Technology continues to drive efficiencies in many ways of everyday life. And for a higher level fire protection program, using technology can be a significant way to enhance your current system. Digital reporting can be provided that is clear and easy to read. Using barcode technology, a lot of data can be captured to give you complete control of your fire protection program. Data such as the brand of the extinguisher, when it was manufactured, description, when the next service date is due, and the location where it is located on campus, down to the building name and even the room number it is in. Handheld computers assist technicians to ensure all pieces of fire equipment are scanned and inspected, or it gives the technicians the opportunity to provide that proactive communication that equipment has been moved, either intentionally or due to or unintentionally because it was used or vandalized. In 2024, now is the time to finally take advantage of the resources and technology available to build a better fire protection program. In summary, nothing is more important than the health and safety of students, faculty, and staff. And we discussed several challenges you probably face today. There are a lot of components to a fire protection program with a lot of buildings. Technology is a great way to get oversight and control your program. And the right vendor partnership can really be an asset. Focus on the people, process, and the promise. And now to shift gears slightly and talk more about your people, I'll pass it back to Garland.
Great. Hey, thanks, Michael. I appreciate it. So now I want to transition over to employee heat stress. So regardless of what side of the coin you're on as it relates to global warming, heat is the leading cause of death among all weather-related phenomena in the U.S. So much that over the last couple of years, there's been a major focus for OSHA to the point where they've been proactively initiating inspections in a variety of industries in both indoor and outdoor settings when the heat index was above 80. The end goal of this is truly to establish some new standards as it relates to employee heat stress. So therefore, let's take a look at what you should do on your campus. There's a couple of different strategies when it comes to building a heat stress program. One would be heat risk assessments, followed by heat risk controls. When it comes to heat risk assessments, the first part of that is understanding what is the environment that they're currently working in. Are they working in direct sunlight? Are there other sources of heat that they need to address that are causing them to be in a very stressful situation? Next is understanding the physical aspects of the work. Does their job require them to be in uniform, or do they have to wear extra clothing or PPE? And I want to touch on that in the next couple of slides as well. From a risk control perspective, let's talk a little bit about water, as well as building that overall awareness. When it comes to water, are you providing them with sodium electrolyte supplements? Are they able to provide, have rest breaks? When they do take rest breaks, when they're outdoors, is there shaded areas for them to retrieve to, again, to get that heat off of? Is there some type of buddy system in place so that they can basically look out for each other when they're in these conditions where we know the temperatures can get pretty hot? And then overall, from an overall awareness perspective, what does that annual training look like for your teams? So when we talk about water, there's a few things that you have to consider. One of the trends that I've noticed here is that several agencies are starting to request bottleless water solutions. These are not only good for the environment because they don't require those 50-gallon jugs that typically are tucked away in closets or up and down hallways, but they also help from a budgetary perspective because typically they're charged at a flat rate and they do not require someone to actually have to change them out. Energy drinks, I can tell you, those are not your friends on those hot summer days. And so giving them supplements or giving them ways to replenish their electrolytes, that's the best way to keep them safe during these types of hazards. Giving your employees water bottles so that they can replenish whenever they need to without having to worry about not having water bottles available is, again, a great way to keep it top of mind. From a technology standpoint, vending solutions are also a great way to have a degree of accountability, because this day and age, vending solutions can also dispense PPE items such as cool towels or even those electrolyte supplements. And that's a great way to keep tabs on the employees to make sure that they are taking advantage of the situation when they're working in less than ideal conditions outdoors. Another best practice includes the chart that you see on the right, which could be posted in all of your restrooms. And this will allow your employees to kind of self-monitor themselves. One thing that we do know is when you are thirsty, your body is already mildly dehydrated. So giving them the ability to kind of monitor that and do self-checks, again, is another best practice in keeping your employees safe. Garment technology. Man, there's been so many advancements in this area. And I think the easiest one that I'll spend a little time on is flame-resistant garments. 10 to 15 years ago, employees just did not want to wear them. They were heavy, they were hot, and even though they were designed to keep them safe, most employees just felt like it wasn't worth the hassle. But technology has truly changed over the years, so much to that the shirt that you see in the middle is a long sleeve flame resistant t-shirt. And again, lighter weight fabric without actually compromising the safety of the employees. If they're in your traditional uniforms, paying close attention to the lightweight fabrics that are available that may have moisture wicking properties in them, or garments that are designed with mesh or vented system, all again enable them to be comfortable when they're in, again, those less than ideal conditions outdoors. Great way to try and keep those employees cool, even though they may be in garments that they're required to wear, but still keeping them safe. When it comes to that overall awareness training, a couple of things that I want to say: leverage your outside resources, leverage your vendor partners. It's their job, and I'll say our job, to stay on top of the latest trends as it relates to any safety measures, and using them to help keep you in the loop on what's coming down the pipeline or how you can be more efficient is a great way of keeping some of that training material fresh. Online training and video content, hey, that is great. But if all they have to do is literally press play and then walk away, get a cup of coffee, or go have some conversations and then come back and say, great, I'm done, they probably won't necessarily retain that knowledge. And so if you have the ability, utilize videos that will drive some type of engagement, whether that engagement is they can't move forward until all of the content has been read to them, or maybe within that slide, there's different options for them to click on in order to see additional content. Anything that will drive that engagement rather than simply allowing them to press play and then multitask. As they wrap it up, having that knowledge test is definitely important. Great way to test to see if they retain that knowledge. But then finally, tracking and accountability, making sure that you know who has done what they needed to do in a timely manner. So from the water perspective, overall awareness and leveraging technology as it relates to the garments that they're in are all great ways to build an effective employee heat stress program for your campus. Now I want to turn it over to Michael to talk a little bit about arc flash and fire safety.
Thanks, Garland. Okay, quick recap so far. We're protecting everyone's eyes on campus. We're protecting the buildings from fire, and we're keeping all of our staff properly hydrated and cool. The next challenge that our facility staff has is protecting those employees who work on or near energized parts or have potential for exposure to flash fire. Arc flash and flash fire hazards typically occur within one of these four categories: research labs, campus utilities or power generation, electric vehicles, and that can be your fleet or student and faculty vehicles, and finally, exposure within regular campus maintenance. For our discussion today, we will only focus on the campus maintenance group within the facilities department. The Arc Flash flash fire program has several different components that need to be addressed. Some of these items are task-based, such as executing a checklist to ensure all equipment has been properly labeled, while other sections have a stronger human element to them, such as employee training and providing and maintaining the proper personal protective equipment, or PPE. Taking your Arc Flash program to a higher level will require a strategic focus in those two main areas. Unfortunately, Arc Flash injuries continue to occur on our college campuses. Troubleshooting an issue or de-energizing equipment can be extremely dangerous, especially if employees let down their guard. The example on the screen occurred just last year on a college campus. I want to draw your attention to the comments that are highlighted. The team was de-energizing the equipment, and the injured employee was not wearing the proper Arc Flash PPE. It is common that staff may feel a sense of safety when performing routine tasks that they have done over and over again. Occasionally, I have heard feedback that we don't work on anything energized, so we don't need that PPE. However, as you can see from this example, even routine tasks such as voltage testing and de-energizing equipment can be dangerous. So what do? How do we address this and put a program in place that can be wildly successful? A fully comprehensive solution is made up of several parts. Even though we may not fall directly under OSHA on our college campuses, we still use the standard as guidance for how to address Arc Flash safety. The right PPE is comprised of proper garments, head protection, and hand protection. Training includes exposure to AED and CPR training, along with NFPA 70E electrical safety training. Each part works together for a total solution. Let's dive in with the PPE first. NFPA 70E did us all a favor by creating the simplified two-category approach to PPE. This approach allows us to set up a solution to remove human error. Staff members do not need to think of what to wear, but rather use universal precautions and come to work in daily wear, shown on the left-hand side. In the rare occasion when an employee may be exposed to equipment greater than 480 volts or labeled as category 3 and 4, then they would typically need to add the taskwear items. The playbook is already created for us. You simply need to identify which employees may be working on or near energized parts so they can have access to this PPE. So what's the difference between daily wear and taskwear? Daily wear describes a system where the employee shows up to work in garments that protect him or her from the hazard. It requires little thought or decision-making from the employee. Their work uniform is already the majority of the PPE that is required. Taskwear are the garments that require the employee to stop, think, and make a decision for what garment that may be required at that time. For example, a common solution that we see on campus and in private industry is the use of coveralls as the primary PPE in the Arc Flash safety program. Unfortunately, coveralls do not put on themselves. We routinely see employees not wearing them at all, or just putting on the bottom half and tying the arms around their waist, or my favorite, which is putting it fully on only to not zipper it up. Also consider that a coverall program still demands the proper undergarments, and most of the traditional work uniforms used today are made up of cotton and polyester. You cannot wear any synthetic materials underneath the coverall. Most employees don't like putting on layers. We had triple-digit heat index for most of the summer last year here in Florida and across the country. It's hard to imagine anyone taking time to layer up a coverall over their existing work clothes to then de-energize a piece of equipment that they have done numerous times without injury in the past. And finally, sharing is definitely not caring when it comes to coveralls. Employees should have their own assigned PPE for good hygiene. It also provides a better degree of accountability to ensure items are available and ready for use. Okay, so you decided to use the simplified two-category approach and assigned everyone their only daily wear. Great job on the first step. Now, as the employer, you have a responsibility to the employee to ensure that PPE is properly cared for and maintained. So NFPA 70E has clear guidance on the inspection and maintenance of ARC-rated garments. These garments have specific cleaning and repairing instructions per the manufacturer. Doing anything differently can immediately void the indemnification language, the warranty, and potentially compromise the garment. NFPA 70E moved to using the word shall here, which does not leave much room for debate on what to do. Manufacturer care instructions should be easily obtained, but let's take a look at some potential challenges when it comes to something as simple as laundry. Most instructions from the manufacturers of ARC-rated clothing include instructions such as do not use chlorine bleach or hydrogen peroxide. You can't iron them and then use starch. You definitely cannot add fabric softener to the wash cycle. I'm blessed because my wife handles most of the laundry at our house, but when I help her out with grocery shopping and she tells me to grab laundry detergent, I am overwhelmed by the plethora of choices on the store shelf. It's literally several feet long of shelving, top to bottom, with all different choices. Most of the detergents automatically include color-safe bleach, or they have added hydrogen peroxide for a deep clean. And you want your clothes to smell clean, so you throw in your favorite fabric softener, which is definitely on the do not use list for ARC-rated garments. Some care instructions for ARC-rated clothing will ask your staff to use soft water and launder the ARC-rated garments separately, which ultimately creates more loads of laundry that need to be done at home. How can you possibly control any part of this process? I'm sorry, I don't have an easy way for you to manage home laundry of your employees, but I can show you other options available to support. A fully comprehensive ARC Flash program that's taken to a higher level would most likely include a vendor partnership that will be able to manage this process for you. Hiring a vendor such as Cintas would include several steps in the process to ensure ARC-rated garments are inspected, cleaned, and maintained according to the manufacturer requirements. Outsourcing this part of your ARC Flash program takes a lot of work off your plate, but also helps share the liability with another party. Now you have a professional solution in place that is on contract to provide specific services to meet your ARC Flash requirements. They should be able to provide you with written documentation weekly. This adds values to your employees so that home laundry, care, and maintenance is removed from their plate. An outsourced uniform laundry program has long been a nice employee benefit for all workers, but when it comes to your maintenance staff working on or near energized parts, that outsourced ARC-rated clothing program helps ensure the health and safety of the staff who need the PPE, and also significantly helps the facility's leadership team who are tasked to manage it all. We have touched on technology in each section that we've discussed today, and when it comes to your ARC Flash program, one way that technology is able to support is with your voltage-rated glove program. A two-color glove system can be put in place, so one color is worn for 6 months, then sent out for testing while the second color is then distributed. Testing of these gloves now comes with a QR code imprinted on each glove. Scanning the QR code with the camera on your cell phone will give you quick and easy access to the testing report for that glove, verifying it is ARC Flash ready. Robust documentation has always been a key part of a world-class safety program. The QR code turns that documentation digital, and you have access to it immediately when needed. The voltage-rated glove program with QR coding technology can be available from your vendor partner. The program also includes replacements of any gloves that fail testing, as well as storage bag and leather protectors. Finally, I refer you to page 22 of the 2024 version of NFPA 70E, which guides us that we shall provide the proper training for AED use and CPR. Considering what has been going on in the media over the past year with sudden cardiac arrest becoming top of mind, providing AED and CPR training for all staff members has been widely popular. It's important to recognize that if you have staff included in your ARC Flash safety program, they must be trained in both requirements, and their training must be ongoing as required. For example, the American Heart Association certification for CPR training is good for 2 years. We love making training fun and engaging. On the screen, you see the Cincinnati Bengals mascot learning CPR at an event that Cintas helps sponsor at their stadium. There are a lot of resources available to help you manage these requirements for your staff. To talk more specifically about AEDs, I'll turn it back over to Garland.
Hey, appreciate it, Michael. So, hey, it's hard to believe that over a year ago, it felt like the whole world stopped due to Damar Hamlin going into sudden cardiac arrest live during during a football game. However, the fact of the matter is that over 356,000 of these sudden cardiac events happen every year outside of the hospital environment. And unfortunately, anywhere between 60 to 80% of those individuals will lose their life before they even reach the hospital. It was because of that a lot of agencies in both the public and the private sector really took a step back to evaluate their safety programs. Will they be able to react as quickly and as efficiently as they did in that situation on live television? Are they properly trained? Are they properly prepared? It really forced a lot of agencies to say, hey, we really need to do a deeper dive into our own AED programs across the campus. 4 months after that event, you had 12 states that immediately started enacting new laws as it relates to AEDs in certain environments. And that's pretty fast, and it still continues to change to this day, where several states are making changes to AED laws as to where they need to be and under what conditions. As I travel and talk to different campuses and customers, there's a few things that I tell them they need to understand clearly. First of all, what is the current process? What does that look like today? How are you able to keep track of the large fleet of devices that run across multiple campuses? It could be throughout the state. I talk to a lot of customers and they talk about, hey, 10, 15 years ago when they did a bulk purchase of AEDs, it was great. But fast forward now, AEDs are missing. Some of those AEDs no longer work. Pads and batteries are 2, 3, 4, 5 years, past their expiration date. They talk about how in the beginning it was a total team effort and they had certain individuals that were responsible for it. But then what happens once turnover kicks in, or people leave, or students move, or who's ever responsible for it shifts and moves to other departments? All of a sudden, the program truly starts to break down. What happens when there's recalls? How do you manage that? How do you stay abreast of what's happening with those devices? What happens when there's an activation? Who's doing the replenishments of those pads and batteries and ensuring that they're doing the monthly inspections on those devices per the manufacturer's warranties? Technology, I'm a big believer in it. My wife is a big Excel user. But in situations like this regarding an AED, Excel is not your friend. There's definitely better technology out there to help you manage this type of device, which is truly a life-saving device, versus using an Excel spreadsheet or an Excel file, because we all know files get corrupt, laptops get lost or never turned back in, and basically you end up having to start all over again. So what I want to talk about is, well, what does it take? And what are some of the things that you should think about when it comes to building a world-class AED program? There's 3 different parts that you really need to think through. You have your planning phase, implementation, and then that ongoing support. From a planning perspective, understanding where you are today is crucial. Knowing every serial number for all of the devices across the campus, along with the placement of those devices across the campus, understanding when all of your pads and batteries expire, that is probably the most important step to starting that planning process. In addition to that, you should then take a step back and understand, hey, well, where are we vulnerable? And what I mean by that is I typically tell campuses and customers that, hey, bare minimum, you should have at least one AED in every building. Because if your goal is to have that 3-minute reaction time from the time that individual collapsed to the time you deliver that shock, 3 minutes is the goal. That could be very challenging if you don't even have a device in the building where the event occurred. And let's face it, that gives you 90 seconds to get over to that next building and 90 seconds to come back. And I'll be the first one to admit I am not as fast as I used to be back in the day. But also, if that happens, the first thing and you'll probably do is ask if that person is okay. There'll probably be a degree of panic. And meanwhile, the clock is ticking. Now you're able to run off to another facility to go and get a device and then come back. There's a lot of time that could be lost in that step. So I always recommend at least one device in every building, and that can also help with that planning phase. The next step is the overall implementation. Now that you understand what your current fleet looks like, now that you've received some of your brand new devices to fill in the gaps on where you're vulnerable, understanding who is responsible for the professional installation and making sure you have all the necessary signage and the cabinets on the wall and even the go bags if you're keeping them in vehicles, or Pelican cases if you need some protection. That's all part of that implementation. The other part to that is ensuring that you have a solid training strategy in place. Not only should you think about your first responders, but there are studies that show that just simply having a device on the wall or having a policy or a law, that's just not enough. You need to think about the general population too. How can you get others engaged in some simplified training efforts so that they feel comfortable in the event that there is an event? So we'll take a step back. You're now in the planning phase where you know how many devices you have on campus. You understand what those devices look like. You're forecasting out the pads and batteries. You've done your installations. You have all of your signage up and ready to go. You now have your training strategy up to standards and you're ready. At that point, it's that ongoing support. And this is where that spreadsheet is simply not your friend. You truly need a web-based portal to manage all of those devices. It is very common for larger campuses to have well over 300 devices spread throughout their campuses. And in order to track those down to the individual device, it's important to have a portal that can handle that data. And what I mean by that, you're able to upload all of your serial numbers along with exactly where those devices are being placed. You have your pads and batteries located and the expiration dates within that portal. A portal that's designed literally to give you notices 30, 60, 90 days in advance when those pads and batteries are due to expire. All of that helps with the planning process. When it comes to performing your checks, and if there's self-checks on the devices that you use, that's important because at that point, the device can then talk to the portal, which can then track when those devices were actually checked and what was the end result. That's something that you simply cannot get from an Excel spreadsheet. And it's a tool like this that will allow you to take your AED programs to another level. In addition to that, it's also a great place to house all of those individuals who have been trained, who may have to be CPR certified, so that as new employees come and go, you have one centralized place where you can house those individuals, stay on top of the training, the individual devices themselves, along with understanding if there's any software upgrades or if there's any recall on those devices. Whenever something like that happens, it's usually tracked and monitored by the serial number itself. And that's what makes knowing the serial numbers of those devices so important. That ongoing capability from a portal system will enable you to have an effective program. Even if on Friday someone hits the lottery and says, I'm done, Monday morning when you come into the office, you're able to pick up and go forward without any hesitation, because everything that you need is housed in that portal and not a spreadsheet on someone's laptop. So I know we said a lot. I want to open it up for some questions, and I think Suzanne was actually tracking any questions that may be in the chat. So I want to pause for a moment, and Suzanne, if you can let us know if we have any questions, we'll be more than glad to answer.
Absolutely, gentlemen. Thank you. So yes, we have one question, a couple of questions here. First one is, what device would you recommend for measuring water at an eye wash station?
There is actually a tool for that. And had you not asked that specific question, I can tell you what it's called, but there's actually a device that we use to measure the flow of the water, in addition to understanding the height of the spray. So there's a couple of things that you can use to do that. And I'm not sure if we know exactly who asked that specific question, but we'll be more than glad to follow up with them personally to let them know how they can do that to ensure that they're maintaining the ANSI standard.
Okay, great. I have another question. Where do you get that self-contained eye wash stations need to be changed every 90 to 120 days? The solutions bags that we get say they have a 3-year shelf life, and they are a single-use bag, so they get replaced when used or every 3 years.
So the solution that we use in our self-contained units are typically changed out anywhere between 90 to 120 days. If you're referring to the bottles that you can literally leave on the shelf, that would definitely be a different product. But our solution that we use for the self-contained units are changed anywhere between 90 to 120 days, which would be different than the bottle solutions that you may keep on your shelf. And again, we can definitely follow up with you to have some further discussions on that. But that is definitely a best practice for the
Okay. Another question that I have is, if we home launder ARC rated garments, how long before the ARC rated properties wear out?
I'll take that one, Suzanne. Great question. I've seen a number of different guidances from various manufacturers. And I think what we discussed earlier today, that taking your ARC rated garment program to a higher level would probably include trying to partner with a vendor to outsource that service. It's just really challenging to control multiple components of the home laundry program. And as an employer, you have the responsibility for care and maintenance of PPE. So I know that if you partner with a vendor, then those garments from the manufacturer usually come with a warranty that can be passed through to the customer as the garments are turned in and laundered by the professional vendor each and every week. Great question.
Okay, great. I have another one. For CPR and AED training, does Cintas have a cadre of trainers, or do you use another organization such as the Red Cross, Heart Association, etc.?
See that we lost Garland there, so I'm going to take that question on. So Cintas primarily partners with the American Heart Association. We are their largest training center for certified CPR, AED, and first aid training.
Okay,
Great.
perfect. I have another here. Let's say you have 150 AEDs. What is the yearly cost of maintenance? Example, replacing the 150 pads and their replacements and batteries.
Another great question. So there's a number of different types of AEDs and manufacturers out there, each with their own requirements and expiration dates. For example, there's a brand where their pads and batteries don't expire for 5 years, while there's another manufacturer where their pads expire every 2 years, batteries expire every 3. So without knowing the specifics of that brand and your campus and the age of the current fleet, it's really hard to shoot from the hip and give you a cost, but be happy to follow up with that individual and provide them with resources to help them.
Well, sorry, let me stop reading to myself. Is there a brochure for that safety center vending machine shown on the slideshow? Does Cintas track expiration dates of all items in the machine and replace them, and at whose cost?
Yes, we do have brochures and marketing pieces for our safety center and our vending solutions. Yes, we do track expiration dates for items, and we do replace them, and costs can be provided for you from your local Cintas office. So love to connect with that individual and get them exactly the information they're looking for. Thank you.
Okay. All right. We had a couple of individuals who had their hands raised. If you would like, maybe we've answered your question, or if you want to pop your hand back up, we're happy to open up the mic for you. In the interim time, I have one here coming in. Do AEDs require periodic certification or just recorded inspections?
See if Garland's back on. Not sure, Garland, if you wanted to jump in and handle that, but I'll start. So the requirement, or I'm sorry, the suggested best practice, right, is to visually inspect your AEDs on a monthly basis to make sure they're operational, to make sure they're still in place, to get and put a visual inspection on pads and batteries, as well as stay in tune with any software updates. And usually you receive those from your vendor, the distributor that sold you the AEDs. They should be in contact with you for any updates that need to be explained. So I know there's varying laws across the different states across the United States, so we don't have a single blanket answer. Like I'm in Florida. I know in Broward County, Florida, they have a requirement for how many AEDs you need, depending on how many floors in the building. Whereas other areas such as Orange County, where I live in Florida, does not have that requirement. So it can get very granular and specific. And if you have more detailed questions, once again, we can be happy to have a Cintas representative connect with you in person at your campus to provide you with all the latest laws and regulations and help you with your program.
Okay. Did you say there's going to be an OSHA regulation for heat stress? I believe there are currently guidelines, but will OSHA start doing inspections?
Can you hear me? I had to call back in. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So I did hear that question. So yes, right now OSHA is currently reviewing heat stress policies throughout. They actually started conducting these inspections at least 2 years ago at this point. So right now there isn't anything that's concrete, but there's been a lot of discussions over.
I think we got the gist of that, Garland. So nothing in law currently, but legislation is coming through for consideration. Thank you.
Okay, great. If you have AEDs at your facility, do you need to have a medical director associated with the facility?
So in order to get an AED, medical direction and medical prescription is required. It's considered a class 3 medical device. That's usually something that a good vendor partner can help assist you with when procuring the AED or setting up a managed program. So you don't necessarily have to have a medical director on site at your facility, but you need to have medical direction and a prescription to go ahead and get that FDA approved class 3 medical device.
Okay, great. I have another one here. What services does Cintas provide for AED maintenance and accountability?
It's a great question. That sounds like a little plug for Cintas. I appreciate whoever asked that question. So, yeah, Cintas has a robust offering for AEDs where you can purchase them outright. And then we have a managed program where we'll provide the AEDs to you, provide monthly inspections, as well as web-based software to help manage it all. We also inspect them for software upgrades, replace pads and batteries according to manufacturer guidelines, and just be that great vendor partner to help you manage the program.
Okay. Oh, we have Garland back. Hey,
Yes,
Garland.
sorry.
It's okay.
It never fails.
At least it wasn't me. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Any more questions,
No.
Suzanne?
I don't. I want to give folks one more opportunity though, because those have been some very, very wide range questions, which has been great. If anyone else has any other questions they'd like to pop in the Q&A, or again, feel free to raise your hand. I can take you off mute if you'd like to speak to our panelists directly. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands. Let me check back over in the Q&A bubble. And I don't have any new additional ones that have come in. So with that, I would like to thank all of you, Garland, Michael, and Amelia. Thank you very much for joining us today. Attendees, thank you for the engagement with your questions and really looking to make sure that you are getting what you need. We really greatly appreciate the content that Cintas has provided to us. As a reminder, we will make this available to you as well as the recording, and it will come to you within 48 hours. So with that, again, Cintas team, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time with us today, and we wish everybody else a great rest of the day.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
We appreciate
Thank
it.
you so
Take
much.
care, everyone.